He looked to the heavens when he heard the engines hum. A sky full of planes and each one with a bomb. And they're gonna wanna drop them on someone. It's 5 to 7. All his friends and family had gone. Left on a
Well, hello. You're listening to Islands at War with me, Keith Bengelly. Nick isn't in the studio today. I'm flying solo. But Nick has done an extraordinary interview with a lady called Melva Stacey. And we're going to play you that interview very shortly. Nick was absolutely thrilled to be offered the chance to speak to Melva. Incredibly grateful also to Melva's daughter Karin for contacting Nick and asking him if he would be interested in interviewing Karin's mother, who is 95 years young, about her time here during the occupation. And because you can imagine, Nick didn't need to be asked twice. Melva told a fascinating account how life was for her as a child, her family, working in the Red Cross Message Bureau and nursing, plus much, much more. He really enjoyed talking to Melva, and that comes over in an interview. And just a bit of background, Melva picks up the story right at the start of the occupation, and the interview itself is just under 40 minutes. It's riveting. So without much ado, we go into that interview. So this is Nick interviewing 95-year-old Melva Stacey.
Day off from school. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was down with my friends at Landcrest, and her father came down and he said, "I'm sorry, you children, but there's going to be an evacuation tomorrow and you're going to have to go away. So you better pack up your things." So we packed up our things. We'd had a swim. We went home and my parents had already packed a little case for us to go, only for me. My brothers were older than me. And so they did that. And we decided that I would go away. So I went up to school the next day. My parents said goodbye to me. They weren't allowed in the grounds of the Vale School. And we stood there from about 10 o'clock till 12. And they said, "Oh, you can go home now, because the boat is not in yet, but come back at 2. So we went back home again, went back at 2, and we stayed there again, standing up. Oh, well, they said at 5 o'clock, "You better go home again because the boat won't be in till 2 o'clock in the morning." Right, I got home and my father said, "We're not going. We'll go together as a family 2 days after." So that was that. Went home. Anyway, on the Friday night, there were 3 planes came over. Obviously, there were Germans looking around the island, and they bombed the town. All the tomatoes were strewn all over the place. And I had 3 uncles that were down there working for Holmes and Sons, so that they managed to run up to their building, which was along the front. And that was the start of it all. So that night, the Germans didn't arrive yet on the Friday. But the next day we thought, we were all a bit uneasy really, what was going to happen really. Anyway, they arrived on the Sunday afternoon in big troop carriers. Sunday afternoon, we were coming out of church, and they arrived on the Sunday. I saw the first Germans on the Monday. I was terrified. They had these green uniforms on, and I was 11. 11. And anyway, then they restarted school. I went to the Vale School. But eventually they took over all the schools of the island. So I was lucky because next door to the Vale School is a church, and they had big schoolrooms. So they took over that as our school. So we used to look over the hedge and see the Germans in there, at our school. They had this big school, and then we were all, I suppose we were about 90 of us that had stayed, I reckon, And then I stayed there for a year. I could have gone to Grummer in town, And I thought, do I want to go all that way, really? Anyway, the year after, I thought, yeah, maybe I will. But it was a job to get there because I only had hosepipe bikes. I had no more. You couldn't get any tyres for your bike. And I had it was a homemade bike, really. And I thought, yeah, I'll go. And because I had to come right down from down here and bicycle right into town. And that was a long way, for a young girl, especially along the front. You get the gales along the front.
And the tide coming over
And
the
tide
sea wall
coming
and things.
over. Oh, we had some horrendous journeys,
That must have been a big problem as well
It was.
with the curfew and things,
It was.
things
And
like
we had
that.
to,
Getting backwards and
Yes.
forwards within the allowed
yes.
time.
So I used to go in the morning for 9 o'clock, and we had to go on the right-hand side of the road, just where the Germans, they made that rule, one of the rules they made, I mean, they brought out all sorts of rules.
Oh, there were a
really.
lot of rules, weren't
And
there?
9 o'clock curfew and whatnot. Anyway, we went like that. And I was at Notre Dame. They had the grammar school there up at Notre Dame. And so I used to go every day. Mr. Peter Gerard was our headmaster at the time. And it was a quite nice school. Sir John Neal's daughter was a teacher there at the time. And so that we knew quite a few of the people that were teaching. And we had good education. That was good. Anyway, when I got to 15, the grammar school decided to move, or they had to move. So anyway, there was a job going at the Red Cross Bureau, typing Red Cross messages. And that was one of the reasons I went to grammar, because I learned how to type, shorthand and bookkeeping.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, well, that might hold me in good stead later on in life, So, yes, I had a job there under Miss Leonie Tritto. She was a nice lady, very true to her word. There were about 8 of us, 8 typists. And people brought in their messages from the island, and they'd go their surnames from A to C.
Yeah.
And we do so many, and it's surprising you could only do perhaps 2 a year like that, because there was quite a few people left here, really.
Yes, yeah. And it was, the messages took quite a long time to get,
Oh, yeah.
to get through to England and then to come back the other way, because they had to go via Portugal, I believe, and then Switzerland and then, onwards. It was quite a
And
difficult
they were only
thing.
allowed to write 25 words.
Yes, yeah.
We are well, and we used to laugh at some of the things that were on them, Mother Hubbard is looking very sick at the moment, and different things like that,
Yeah. I've spoken to some people that said that they sent messages and it was almost like a code.
Yeah.
It would,
Yes.
it would explain to their relatives in England
And they know
without the Germans knowing what they meant.
I'm sure they realised
Some of
Mother
them,
Hubbard.
yeah, I'm sure some of
and
them they
things like
probably
that.
did. Yeah.
Oh, we used to laugh at some of them. And they were all, after we'd typed them, I used to go up to Grange Lodge because the Germans took over.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Used to be scared stiff going up there, and knock on the door and take the Red Cross in a big box. I could just about carry it up there, and they'd send them by the Red Cross, of course. And then we get the next lot of people coming in, with their Red Cross messages. So that's how that went on during the war.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because it went on for a little bit. And then going towards the end of the war, when things got a bit nearer to us, France,
Yes.
they closed. They had to close. So I thought, where am I going now? I did try the telephone exchange, but I didn't like it there. Good morning, hello, and all this and that. So my cousin was at the hospital. We only had one, the Cassel Hospital.
Yeah.
And she said, why don't you come as a junior nurse in the maternity ward with the babies? Oh, yeah, I said, I'd like that. So that's what I did. And I mean, we had loads of fun, really. And we used to have once a week, the doctors would all accumulate and we'd have perhaps a little singing party and they'd join in with us, And I suppose being there, I was able to have a bit more food than what I would have had at home, really.
Yeah.
You know, because they used to have to keep so much food there for the patient.
So did you go home at night from there?
Oh, no, from that there. Just round the back of the hospital, we walked through a little lane and we stayed with a Mr. and Mrs. Ninnan. They were at the top of a little hill. They used to board us out to some of these people. And these people took in about 3 or 4 bedrooms.
Uh-huh.
I think some of the sisters lived above us, you know, and the doctors.
Mm.
So we had to behave ourselves, you know. And so we didn't have far to go. And then we had to do night duty. So, I mean, I was 16, they do night duty.
Yeah.
But it was lovely, really. I had to take the babies to the patients there, you know, and I enjoyed that very much, really. It was nice. And then one morning we heard Churchill on the radio, and he said, our dear little islands will be free today. So we've been on duty all night, and we said, my gosh, we're not going to bed, are we? No. So at 8 o'clock in the morning, we get on our old bikes, we go down up to the Roy Hayes, throw it in the avenue, because in those days it was full of trees.
Yes, yeah.
And we ran down, and I'll tell you what, people had come in from all over the island. They'd come in from St. Peter's, they walked.
Yeah.
No other transport. They'd walked there, and there was a whole lot of people. And they saw us running. They said, you can go down the front, you know. So we stayed in the front. And then the Germans were with buckets at the Royal, feeding out the hotel around, you know, with the mess they made. And then all of a sudden there was a big cheer and the British soldiers came out. Well, really, it could never be the same again, but it was wonderful. We were crying. We were laughing. It was wonderful. After 5 years of hardly much food, and it was just lovely. It was beautiful. So it was really nice.
It must have been very difficult after D-Day when you could see, you know, what was going on the French coast. There was,
we could hear.
As I understand it, you could hear the bombing and the shelling of the French coast. You could see it, you know, there's clouds of smoke coming from the Cherbourg Peninsula.
Oh, yeah.
There must have been so much. I've read a few accounts from people's diaries that they really hoped then that it was about to finish.
Yeah, we said the same.
That it would be liberated. It must have been, must have been awful when you realised, actually, they're not coming here. They've taken the French coast, but it must have been absolutely awful.
It was awful, but we had to put up with it, eh?
Yeah.
And of course, when they arrived, well, it was horrendous. It was lovely. What a celebration!
I've seen some films of it from the archives, and just the number of people that were in the streets, and celebrating.
There'll never be another day like it. Well, I hope there isn't, but still, But it was really, you know. But then we went through it. We didn't have much food. I used to feel sorry for my parents, really, because they didn't have much to give us, you know.
Yeah.
They used to, well, I know in those days you didn't eat a lot of potato skins.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we could have some potato skins, we were pleased with them, wash them and fry them and, you know, make the best of a meal. And there wasn't very, very little meat, really.
But even getting something to be able to fry the potato skins with was very difficult, as I understand it.
We didn't have much butter or anything like that. It was very sparse in those things. Yeah. The rations were very big.
No, I've seen the rations, examples of, you know, what was for one person for a week, and it's not really not very much. It makes you feel very guilty if you go out and you go to a restaurant and they get, you know, or go to a pub for a pub lunch and they give you a massive plate full of food, and you think, gosh, that would have been 2 or 3 weeks worth of food for someone.
And then they used to ration the bread. So we used to count our slices, what we could have today and what we could have because I was working at the bureau then, Red Cross Bureau. Mm-hmm. So I used to take some lunch with me. And up the street from the Red Cross Bureau, not the last, is it? No, the shop there at the bottom by the market. That was a little tea shop.
Oh, okay.
And she used to make soup of a kind, but still we were glad of it. Watery soup, but we used to go up there and have a little lunch and I used to keep a slice of bread for that. But cycling back home as well, you know, you were hungry when you got back home.
This is something I was talking with my friend Keith about the other day. You know, not only did you have all the constraints of the curfew, but you had to get yourself to work.
Yeah.
Do your day's work and get back.
That's right.
But also on very meagre rations. So you're expending a lot of energy to get to and from anywhere, be it work or if you wanted to go and see some relatives that, you know, lived in a different parish. You're using a lot of energy, which you're not really getting the calories to replace. It's incredible.
And my father, he had to go and pay the rent right out by the King's Mills from the Moor, from down there, on his bike. And he got knocked over by the Germans.
I've heard their driving wasn't very good.
And he was in hospital for 9 months, my dad.
Gosh.
But he lived to 104, nearly 105.
Wow.
Yes. So that's what happened to him, you know.
Yes. I've seen a lot of accounts in articles in the Guernsey Press and the Star of the time where they're saying, you know, there's been an accident. A German lorry hit somebody on their bicycle,
terrible.
And generally, people that I've spoken to have said that some of the driving was pretty appalling, and they weren't very good at stopping when they were supposed to.
That's right. And I stayed to my parents sometimes overnight for a change, and I had to leave at 6 a.m. to get to Catel on my old hosepipe bike. And I was going up the Capels early in the morning, about 6:10, and I heard the Germans over the hedge, and I thought, oh, no. And all of a sudden, I felt this come round my neck. Oh, I thought they're trying to lasso me into the hedge. And I went like mad. I gradually got it away, and I ran up, and my pedal broke on my bike. So I ran to a house that I knew, a young man who was going out with my cousin at the time, and I threw some stones at his window, and I said, he said, don't worry, I'll come down. And he rode with me to the hospital. And when I got on duty that morning, one of the nurses said, oh, I've had an awful journey, she said. The big wires of the Capels had come down, and that's what I felt round my neck.
It's the wires.
Yeah, they were all soft and wet, you know. And I thought it was the Germans behind me. Oh, dear. So that was one thing that, you know, I was a bit frightened about. They came in the hospital once or twice, had a look round, you know.
But did they mostly leave the hospital alone?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. It was their orders. You had to be in at 9 and, you know, sometimes it was 10.
Yeah.
You know, in the summer, I think it was 10. But 9 was the winter.
Yeah.
And my cousin and I, we used to go down the road. They had a big barn. So we used to have some music going on in the barn, you know. And because we'd overstay the limit, we'd stay till 10 or 11. And we said we better go home. But we only had to run up the road to get to my little cottage. And we heard the Germans coming. Well, we ran into the field and hoped that they wouldn't come in there. They didn't. So we heard them pass and we were nearly home anyway. But if they found us, who knows?
Yeah, we might have ended up in prison.
Well, you don't know. Well, I don't know about prison. I reckon they would have taken us. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, my cousin was a bit older than me. She was, 60 to, nearly 20, I suppose. So, you know, that she was a bit older. I think they would have thought, well, we got somebody good here.
Oh, right.
You don't know.
Yeah,
do you?
no, you don't know. You don't know what's gonna happen.
But I do know when they started to bomb the place, when they arrived, we all went to the farm, and we all sat in the passageway. And then the man in charge up there said, we oughtn't to be in here, we ought to be outside. We ran down the field under the hedge. I thought, well, I don't know if that was the right place to go, but we did that, You don't know what to do you?
No, indeed. And everyone was very, very confused about what was going on in that week.
That's right.
In that week before, weren't they?
That's right.
The chap who was the harbour master, he later escaped in September 1940 in a boat, but he writes in some notes that he wrote and an interview that he gave about it. He said it felt really weird that week between the official evacuation boats going and the mail boat started sailing again, was coming in and out, and he said it just felt odd. It was just and as he lived down at Bordeaux, and as every day during that week, he said people used to stop him. There'd be people stood around chatting because they're not really quite sure what's going to go on.
No.
And he'd get stopped and asked if he knew what was going on. And he was like, well, I don't know. All I've seen is boats going in and out.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. But he talked about that, and that about it felt very strange, and that just not knowing
what was going to
happen.
Well, nobody knew what was going to happen. Really. We didn't know. And then they built all these shelters were built. And they used to say, they'll shove you in and gas you. It used to frighten us, really.
Yeah. Just the uncertainty of knowing what.
Awful. It was awful. There you are.
It must have been awful as well when they took the radios away.
Oh, yes. But my uncles used to go up in their attic and they had them.
There were a lot of people who either made crystal radios or had two radios and handed one in and kept the other, weren't they? Yeah.
My uncles, I can remember the Germans knocked on the door, my grandmother, near the wall it was, and there was two Germans there. They were going to come in. So he said, quick, put them in the saucepan, anywhere. But they shoved them in the saucepan because they were no good after. But, that's the way they...
I've read a story of a lady down at Varzon who did that as well. Who saw the Germans coming up the pathway, up the pathway to her house, and she panicked so much that she just lifted the lid on the pot that was in the fireplace, and chucked it in, and her husband wasn't very happy with that.
Yeah, but still better that than
getting caught with the radio.
Perhaps sent to France.
Yes, absolutely.
And they were going to send all the people that were born in England to France. Well, my grandfather was born in England, and he was ready to go, and they exempted him. So that was good. So we were lucky there. I don't know why they did that, but they did.
Yeah, there were a few people that they suddenly changed. They changed their minds, didn't they? And decided for whatever reason that they wouldn't. Yeah,
we never found out why. But he lived right near the chapel down the mall there. Yeah. And so that was good, really.
Yeah. But
it was just the fear of, them. And the trouble is, when I used to go to town to work, I'd get in town, and then the British would come over, trying to bomb the boat, save the Joe.
Yes.
To throw my bike in the road and run. And that was frightening too.
Yes. I remember reading about one where there'd been a German submarine that had come into the harbour to be repaired.
Yeah.
It had gone, but they came the next day, early in the morning.
Yes.
And bombed the old harbour.
Yeah.
And blew out all of the glass in all the windows along the seafront, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yes, it was. That's right.
Caused a right mess.
You weren't safe in town, really.
No.
But in the end, I used to go around the back way to Notre Dame because it was too dangerous to go around town.
Yeah.
There was nowhere to run. The shops weren't open yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the morning, and there was shrapnel falling, all over the place. So just throw the old bike down,
The other thing I've read about people who lived in town as well was because they had nowhere to grow a little bit of extra food.
Yeah.
It made it very difficult for them because they couldn't get extra food by, digging up a little bit of their garden to use.
Yeah.
And keeping it back without anybody
That's right.
knowing. So it was very difficult for them.
Yes.
It must have been slightly easier out at the hospital, maybe.
Yes. And before I went to the hospital, my father used to grow a bit, but you had to have the seed,
which
to
was
grow
difficult.
potatoes.
Difficult to get the seed in the first place.
He used to grow. He had a little patch, so he used to grow, a few things, but it was difficult. I feel sorry. The food must have been awful for our parents, really. Had nothing really to give us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've seen some of the recipes as well that they published in the Guernsey press as recommendations for things, and I must say they don't sound very.
We ate enough beans, haricot beans.
Yes, some of them don't sound very appetizing to me, particularly the limpets.
Yeah.
Limpet stew.
Well, we weren't allowed on the beach.
No, this was early. This was quite early on. This was before they mined the beaches.
Yeah.
This was in, I think it was October 1940.
Oh, well,
and there was a recipe for limpet stew, and it does.
I wouldn't like limpets.
No, well, I'm allergic to shellfish. So.
They were very tough limpets.
Yes, well, yes, because
I couldn't eat them.
I saw a chap actually, one Liberation was actually made some just to demonstrate what it was like, and he was putting the limpets through a mangle.
Yeah,
just because that was the only way to soften them up.
Yes,
because they were really rock hard.
You couldn't chew them,
Yeah,
they were really tough.
And I think Frank Struebant experimented with them in his cafe and nearly burnt the place down. I think because they weren't the best for trying to fry.
That's right.
I seem to recall reading that somewhere.
Yes, yeah. So the food really was when I think my poor father there, he still had to go to work all day and come home to hardly anything.
Yeah.
So, we used to make sure that he had more bread than us anyway.
Yeah.
But the funny part about it was we all had our bread and we all had to share it out what we could have. So we used to have our own little loaf. And, and then the Red Cross parcels came. So that was good.
Yes, yeah.
That was good. My cousin, when she had hers, she had her bar of chocolate. And she was ill all night. Just
through not having had chocolate before. Yeah.
She was we were nursing then, and she was sick all night after eating this chocolate, But it was so it was lovely to have this parcel,
Yeah, some things which you wouldn't have seen since before the occupation started.
No.
Which is, I can't imagine that not being. I'm terrible for eating chocolate. I can't imagine not having chocolate for 5 years.
Well, we had a bit of French chocolate.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't very good, really.
Yeah, yes, because obviously a lot of stuff had to be brought in from France. Yes. And it was a bit hit and miss about what they could get their hands on.
That's right.
So you didn't necessarily when they were trying to bring food over for the civilian population, they couldn't necessarily get. They might go over saying, right, we want X, Y, and Z, and they come back with A, B, and C instead, because that was all the French were either willing to sell them, or all the Germans would let them buy. So it was very difficult, wasn't it?
Very, very difficult. Yes, yeah. The food was, we were lucky if you had a good meal.
Mm. What did you do for entertainment?
Well, we made our own entertainment.
Yes,
Like that night, we went just down the road, and I had a barn, so we'd have an evening of music, but it's who you knew, really.
Yes, yeah.
It's friends that you knew, or if it was a holiday time, you'd go and stay the weekend. So that's what you had to do. This curfew was at 9:00, so
so it wasn't much.
You'd stay and sleep the weekend, and it was like a little holiday for us, really.
Yes, I've seen that with people from town who've written in their diaries that they've gone off to Varzon for the weekend because it's Christmas.
That's right.
It's Christmas and they've gone to stay with relatives because
right.
Otherwise they'd have spent 2 hours getting there, 2 hours getting back. And they'd have had no time.
Never had any time.
With them
so
at
that's
all.
We made our own entertainment, really. That's all we could do,
Yeah.
Yeah, and they closed a lot of the churches.
Yes, I heard that, yes.
They had 1 or 2 open. And what we did, I used to go down to Bordeaux, because I lived around here. Mm-hmm. Or we go to somebody's house for a couple of hours, but we had to be home for curfew, of course.
Yeah, I read that I think it was the Methodist minister from Bordeaux, because they were short of people for the churches. He used to walk miles on a Sunday to go and give a couple of services all the way out towards Plymouth that way, which is a long old way, and then he'd just get himself back again.
Yeah, or go on your bike, and that was it.
Yeah.
No traffic on the road.
No, I mean
just bikes.
Yes. Yeah, and they weren't allowed to cycle 3 abreast or anything like that. They had to be single file.
Single file. Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of people get fined for that in the Guernsey. The Guernsey press is from 1940.
Yes, that's right.
1941, etc. And adverts reminding people that they're not allowed to cycle, 3 abreast. It sounds like it would have been pretty hazardous to do that anyway. With some of the driving that was going on.
Yes. But it was horrendous, really, But then we all start off in the morning for town, I used to live down here, so I had a long way to go on my bike.
Yeah, it's a long way. I sometimes walk into town, and I live at Delancey Park, and I still think that's quite a long way. Actually,
yes, that's right.
And that's a long way from here. So
yeah. I used to start home, and it used to take me a good bit to get there. Yeah, and especially in the winter, right?
Yeah, and especially when you got tires made of hose pipes, they're not. That must have been pretty dangerous because you're not going to have had any tread on those, are you?
No.
So it must have been pretty hazardous, particularly in the summer and in the wet.
And big bolts around, and they could hear me coming down. They could hear me coming into town. But it was unlucky that we didn't have any tires.
Yeah, from quite early on, that was a massive problem, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that and the Germans confiscating bicycles as well because they wanted them for themselves to get around.
But they wouldn't have done much with mine.
I've seen a photograph of some Germans down at what's now St Pierre Park, but what was Weimar College.
Yes, yeah.
And there's a photograph of them there, and they've all got, there must be about 50 of them in the photograph, and they've all got bicycles because it was the only way they were getting around as well. But,
some were lucky; they had newish bicycles.
Yeah.
When the war started, but I had one that was made up. I didn't have a proper bike, really.
I think there was quite a bit of that, wasn't there? Where people got bits of bicycles that were broken and kind of made one bike out of
and mine was in nearly top gear, so it was hard going, I can tell you. Sure.
And as we both know, Guernsey is not a flat place, is it?
Wasn't too bad from here.
Nice and flat around here, isn't it?
Wasn't too bad from here to town.
To town, it's not so bad.
No.
But it's if you want to go anywhere else, it's a bit uphill.
My dad would say, let's go for a bicycle ride on a Sunday afternoon. And he used to take me right round the Cat Hill, the big, big hills. And, I used to go with him. It was good fun, really. Yeah, you had to make your own fun, really.
Yeah. And it must have been difficult as well not being able to go to the beach.
Oh, no, we couldn't go to the beach.
Yeah, exactly. And because, I mean, traditionally, that's one of the, big family things to do in Guernsey.
The only thing you could do is sit by the quarries, People used to go in the quarry and have a swim.
Gosh, that must have been quite dangerous, actually.
They did, though.
Yeah.
I've seen them down at the top there. They go in and have a swim in the quarry.
I'd be worried about getting back out again.
Yeah, so would I. I never went in. And it must have been really cold. Because
the bathing pools were open some of the time, but not.
Yeah, and that's all the time.
Not all the time, were they?
No.
Yeah, so that you couldn't even go there.
No.
All of the
you
time.
weren't allowed near the beaches anywhere.
No.
I mean, one Sunday, we went to the little chapel of La Moy.
Oh, yeah.
And Mr. Meyer used to play the organ for us. The following Sunday, he wasn't there. He'd gone off. He'd escaped with 3 or 4 others, They got in a little boat and landed at Brixham.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and his wife was she'd evacuated with the children, and she'd gone to Wales. So that's where he wanted to go. So he went. Yeah, he was gone, and they were lucky.
Yeah, there were a few escapes from Bordeaux, Bordeaux area, actually.
Down here.
Yeah, there were a few that got away from there.
He was lucky.
Yeah, I wouldn't have fancied it myself. I've seen some of these boats, and Keith and I talked about it on a podcast recently. I think people don't necessarily appreciate that some of these boats were sort of 20 feet long.
That's right.
Totally open, and you're crossing the channel.
Yeah.
You've never been that way before.
I know.
You might have gone as far as Alderney if you're really adventurous.
That's all.
But you've never been any further, and I just find it incredible.
And they were lucky to have got there, I think.
Yeah.
Because once they knew they'd gone, I bet they were being followed.
Oh yes, yeah.
Searchlight, and
I think
there was a searchlight around them, but they managed to escape it.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, they were lucky. So he went and he got in. He got to see his wife. So there you are.
Yes, yeah. And at the start of the occupation, when people escaped, there tended to be newspaper articles and things in the UK, which I've seen, but then they all kind of stop around September because as I understand it from reading some of the British government minutes, they would suddenly realise, hang on, we're giving away all this information about these people have made it here safely.
Yes.
And they were worried about German spies and see the papers and find out. But also they suddenly thought, hang on, it might turn out badly for the relatives of people that have escaped.
Yes. Yeah. We used to get a bit frightened sometimes. The things that used to come out, And
I think there were lots of rumours as well. It used to spring up.
Yes.
When people had escaped.
That's right.
I've seen things like people saying that, the day after, or actually the same evening as someone has escaped. I've seen a record of, this is 9:00 at night, and they've escaped at 6:00 in the afternoon.
Yes.
And there's already a rumour going around the island that they'd met a submarine off of Herm, and it had come to say, and all sorts of fantastic stories that sprung up. But I guess if there was no news coming from outside other than if you had a radio, it must have been very difficult to know what was going on. Really.
Oh yes, you had to have something that was going on.
And
you never knew when the Germans were going to come into your house.
Yeah.
They'd go outside and they'd walk in, and have a look round, and see if we've gone out and pick up any leaflets that have been dropped.
Yes,
in the garden,
I'd seen a funny story about that where a chap, this is near Bordeaux as well, where the chap was working in his garden, and he'd seen some of these leaflets down the road and collected a few, but this German came out of a house next door that was the Germans had taken it over, and he was holding on to his neck and he was muttering and he worked out that this German chap was swearing as well, and because he'd been asleep upstairs, and one of these big bundles of leaflets had come through the roof and hit him on the head. Which this chap found very, very funny.
Yeah, it's something he did. But we made our own fun, and we used to make up verses, about the food. We'd say, all quite well, but getting thinner. Not much for tea, but less for dinner. And not exactly on our offers. We say goodbye to cold hand suppers. They ration this, they ration that. We get the lean and they get the fat. And then we find something else to write about,
Yeah, just sort of a bit of humour in adversity kind of thing, just to cheer yourself up a little bit.
Yes.
I can
just to give us a bit of a kick, Yeah. Yeah, you just had to make your own fun, and, we were there, we had to put up with it, didn't we?
You couldn't really do anything about it, could you?
Not at all. Not at all. But there you are.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me. This has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much.
Okay. A pleasure.
What a wonderful interview. Well done, Nick. That is absolutely fantastic memories of the war years from the wonderful Melva Stacey, 95 years young. We'd like to give a huge thank you to the Stacey family. Well done, Nick, indeed. And that is the third in 3 specials that we've put out as part of our podcast, Islands at War. In the next podcast after this, or that will follow this one, we revert to our month-on-month account of the occupation, the German occupation of the bailiwick of Guernsey. We return to sequence, and we will be talking about the events that took place in February 1941. In addition to this podcast, we have a musical supplement of music from about the 1920s up to the very early 60s, including the war years. Some great music there. It's called Rough and Rowdy Times. It's presented by myself. It's an hour-long program, and you can pick that up on GNet Radio Mixcloud. Go to the website www.gnetradio.com, and indeed, these podcasts are extremely well supported. So thank you to all of you that are following us. We also on YouTube, Nick tells me, and picking up lessons there, which is very, very gratifying. And in fact, GNet Radio have decided to launch a new podcast called 3 Men in a Shed, where the 3 senior DJs, myself included, play music and certainly we discuss the music that's on our radar within that fortnight, and we will be putting the music discussed in the program up on a Spotify list, 3 Men in a Shed. Please support GNet Radio. Some great programs on there. It's funded by Guernsey Arts, and we're all volunteers and we do what we can, but it's a great joy to do. Okay, so what I'm going to do is play out now with Jim Delbridge our wonderful song 5 to 7, or Jim's wonderful song 5 to 7, about the bombing of St. Peter Port in June 1940, 28th of June, Friday night at 5 to 7. So we'll play out with this and catch you next time for February 1941. Bye-bye.
It's 5 to 7. He looked to the heavens when he heard the engines hum. A sky full of planes and each one with a bomb. And they're gonna wanna drop them on someone. It's 5 to 7. All his friends and family had gone, left on a ship 'cause they knew what was to come. But someone had to stay to carry on.